Hook. Imagine preparing for weeks for a blind date with someone you've been told is your perfect match. You've heard all about them. You've built them up in your mind. You've even seen their picture. You arrive at the restaurant, heart pounding with anticipation, only to find a complete stranger sitting at the table. This is a story about a double date gone terribly wrong. A story of mistaken identity, or perhaps, a deliberate and cruel deception. Story. This story begins, as many do, with a work friendship. A man we'll call our storyteller worked with a young woman named Chelsea. She was vivacious, attractive, and had a particular idea stuck in her head. That he would be a perfect fit for her friend, Nicole. She would bring it up periodically, almost as if the conversation were brand new each time. You know, she'd say, I really think you and my friend Nicole would hit it off. In the beginning, his responses were exactly what you might expect. Is she cute? He'd ask. But over time, as the conversation repeated itself, his questions evolved. He became more invested in the idea, trying to find a genuine connection beyond the superficial. He started asking things like, what do we have in common? Chelsea's answers, however, remained frustratingly vague. She'd gone from rolling her eyes at his initial questions to offering thin threads of compatibility. Well, she once offered, you're both tall. Despite the lack of detail, the seed was planted. Chelsea was a magnetic person, and her friends, he knew, were much the same. This Nicole, he imagined, was part of that circle, a stereotypically beautiful, tall, blonde woman. He genuinely wanted Chelsea to make the introduction, to follow through on her repeated promises, but during their time as colleagues, it never materialized. The idea of Nicole remained just that, an idea. Years passed, jobs changed, and life moved on. Then, a chance encounter brought the past back into focus. He was near his new office when he walked into a high-end liquor store and saw a familiar face behind the counter. It was Chelsea. They fell back into an easy rapport, catching up from time to time when he stopped in. And before long, she brought it up again. I still think you and Nicole would be a great fit. This time, he wasn't going to let the opportunity slip away. He pressed her for the setup, and Chelsea, perhaps sensing his seriousness, finally began to paint a clearer picture of this mystery woman. The old hits were there, she was tall, they shared the same sense of humor, but now there were new, specific details. Nicole was a waitress at a nice restaurant nearby. They had other shared interests. Chelsea even recalled a specific memory that seemed to seal the deal. She said, I remember one day you were telling me all about The Walking Dead at our old job. It's so weird, because later that night, I was hanging out with Nicole, and she basically repeated everything you had said. This was the hook. It was a concrete, tangible piece of common ground. Convinced, he and Chelsea exchanged numbers. Later that day, a text came through with a time and a place. The plan was a double date, Chelsea and her fiancé, him, and at long last, Nicole. Fueled by years of curiosity, he did what most people would do. He looked her up. A quick search of Chelsea's social media connections confirmed his suspicions. The Nicole in the pictures was exactly as he'd imagined, tall, blonde, and, in his own words, wildly out of his league. The anticipation was now mixed with a heavy dose of nerves. The morning of the planned date, his phone buzzed. It was Chelsea. They needed to postpone. It was a deflating but understandable setback. They rescheduled for the following week, same time, same place. He decided to use the extra time to his advantage. This was his one shot, and he wasn't going to waste it. He got a fresh haircut. He bought a new outfit. He even studied the restaurant's menu online, planning his order in advance. He did everything he could think of to put his absolute best foot forward. The night finally arrived. He walked into the restaurant feeling prepared, confident, and ready to meet the woman he'd been hearing about for years. Chelsea and her fiancé were already there, and they stood to make the introduction. He smiled, extended his hand, and was introduced to a very, very different Nicole. This Nicole was not the woman from the pictures. She was short. She was, as he described it, fairly overweight. And she didn't work at a restaurant, she worked at a daycare. The record scratch moment was palpable. He knew, instantly, that his face gave him away. The carefully constructed confidence crumbled, replaced by a visible, undeniable wave of disappointment. He could see it reflected in the panicked eyes of Chelsea and her fiancé, and in the confused, guarded expression of the woman sitting before him. Now, you might be thinking this is where he makes a polite excuse and leaves. But he didn't. He decided to see it through. He sat down, took a breath, and proceeded to go on the date. But his disappointment had curdled into something else, something sharper. He decided to play a game. Throughout the dinner, he kept steering the conversation back to the things he knew about her. The details Chelsea had so carefully provided about the other Nicole. He'd turned to her with a look of innocent curiosity. "So," he asked, "when did you get bored of *The Walking Dead'?" The question hung in the air. Chelsea jumped in, trying her best to talk her way around it, to deflect and change the subject. But he was relentless. A little while later, he tried again.